Chapter 26. When we got back upstairs, we found Samson curled up, snug as a bug, under the table in the boys' room, sound asleep, and clutching the slinky from the Mega Mart to his face, in a way that was sure to leave a funny mark in the morning. He'd pulled off one of the flowery motel bedspreads and draped it over the table like a tent, leaving the beds for Will and Fish. But he'd taken all the pillows with him. In the girls' room, Bobby took one bed for her whole self, and I shared the other with Lil in her big angel feet and her lumberjack snore. Just before she fell asleep, Lil sighed. "You can never tell when a bad thing might make a good thing happen," she said quietly. And at first, I wasn't sure if she was talking to herself or me. It wasn't easy for me to fall asleep that night. The mattress was hard, and the bed sheets were rough against my cheek. Lil's words haunted me, keeping my mind running like a mouse on a wheel. I thought about the boys across the hall, and about Will kissing me in the pool. I thought about Lester on his cot outside in the bus, and Lil next to me, dreaming of him. I thought about Bobby, and how she was beginning to feel like something awfully close to a friend. And then I thought about the homeless man behind the diner, and about Papa tucked in his bed at Selena Hope. And I wondered if either of them would ever be able to find any good in all the bad they were caught in. Before Papa's accident, the biggest bad in my life had been Grandma Dollop dying. I remembered standing next to Papa at Grandma's funeral when I was 10 years old. He'd held my hand the entire time. There in the cemetery, Grandma had been laid to rest, surrounded by flowers and family. Jars and jars of her radio favorites were stacked on and around, and even inside the casket, like Grandma Dollop was one of the pharaohs of Egypt, taking all of her treasures with her. Aunt Dinah and Uncle Autry were there with their families, as well as a few of the remaining great aunts and uncles, and second cousins, who were able to make the journey south. Even Grandma's light-fingered sister, Jubilee, was there, though Mom had been sure to hide all of her jewelry and keep a close watch on the silverware when Jubilee came over to the house for the wake. Grandma's was a funeral like no other. Mama and Aunt Dana had sat like sturdy bookends on either side of Grandpa Bamba, with their arms linked tightly through his, supporting him as the preacher said his words and prayers. But when the preacher reached his last amen, sorrow and grief unleashed the savvies of young and old alike. Lightning struck a nearby tree. A swarm of dragonflies and bumblebees filled the air above the casket, dancing and darting like an array of living fireworks. The ground beneath our feet grew thick. The grass beneath our feet grew thick and tall, and the flowers in bud opened up to bloom, filling the air with a heady fragrance. The underground sprinklers came on like fountains, surrounding us all in a grand display of seemingly choreographed plumes and jets of waltzing water. Yet not a single drop fell down upon the mourners. And finally, as the tears rolled down Grandpa Bamba's cheeks, the ground began to rumble. Headstones rocked, and the folding chairs shuddered and rattled to and fro, with all the folks still sitting in them holding tight. The earth shook violently, and Grandma's glass jars began to topple and break, filling the air with a riot of sound. Organ music and gospel choirs, country western ballads, and pa polka music flew into the air like boisterous confetti. Great voices lit upon the breeze, with words that were both sweet and sharp, speeches that were moving and powerful. There were words like dream, and words like freedom that lingered in the air, and the voices of women, men, and children. And Papa had wrapped his arms around me then, and we'd closed our eyes, listening together to the spectacle of sounds, the procession of melodies, to the vanishing radio waves of Grandma Dollop's savvy. These memories and more flooded my mind as I tossed and turned in that motel bed outside Lincoln. All my running away, and all of this fuss and trouble, was for Papa, I reminded myself. It was all for Papa. But something about that idea nagged at me. Something flummoxed inside me, deep, deep, deep in the pit of my stomach, with a kink and a snarl. I had run away for Papa, hadn't I? I'd fled the church in Hebron, convinced that I had to, convinced I could wake up my papa and make things right. But now, lying in the too dark room of the Lincoln Sleepy 10 in a Mega Mart t-shirt with the tag still attached and scratching my neck, it occurred to me that Papa hadn't been the only reason I'd run away. Running away meant running from something. When I walked out of that church in Hebron, I was running toward Papa, but maybe, I was running away from something else. Running away from my unexpected, unwished-for savvy. Running away from the fact that I was growing up and life was changing as quick and sure and electrifying and terrifying as rocket's sparks or fish's hurricane or even a very first kiss. These thoughts kept me wide awake late into the night. The boys moseyed into our room just after 9 o'clock the next morning, balancing styrofoam plates of thick, crisp waffles and plastic cups of orange juice from the breakfast bar downstairs. Will Jr. wore a long black Mega Mart t-shirt, and his hair was tousled and tangled. Since running away from Hebron, Will had almost completely lost the serious look that I was so used to seeing him wear. "It's getting late," said Lil, opening the curtains and nearly blinding me with morning sunlight. "I let you sleep too long." "Wake up, Sleeping Beauty," Will said, shoving a plate of sticky, syrupy waffles on my way. "You went downstairs?" I said in a whisper, making sure Lil couldn't hear. "Did anyone see you?" Will leaned in close to my ear. "No one saw us, Mibs," he whispered back, before sitting down on the edge of the other bed next to Fish, who had already dug into his breakfast. Bobby was in the bathroom, taking forever to get herself ready, and Lil fussed and mussed over Samson, trying to run a comb through his mane of dark hair before he could escape into the recesses of the empty motel closet. Across from me, Fish let go a belch to be proud of, and Will Jr. matched it in length and volume, as though trying to beat a world record. I wrinkled up my nose at them as I cut my waffles. "I thought you wanted to grow up to be just like your daddy, Will Jr., I scolded, trying not to let on that I was still feeling unsettled by his kiss in the pool. But the boy just smiled at me and winked. "I do." Fish snorted and jabbed Will in the ribs with his elbow, dripping syrup on the floor with his fork. "Don't tell me Pastor Meeks can belch like that," he said through a mouthful of waffle. "Pastor Meeks can't," Will replied, with another shameless grin. Lil chose that moment to try to turn on the television, wanting to check the weather. We all turned to her with a sudden shout of, "Don't!" that nearly made that poor woman sprout wings and fly. Fish stood up so fast that he knocked his plate of waffles face down onto the floor. He bumped Will, who elbowed the plastic cup of orange juice on the nightstand next to him, and sent it spilling and dripping into the drawer, with a Bible and a phone book and a piece of delivery coupons. Bobby unlocked the bathroom door and stepped out in time for the rest of us to make a dash for towels and water. Lester knocked, just as things were returning to order. He was wearing the new tie Lil had bought him, along with a clean shirt and a fresh pair of overalls. "Time to go," he said, with a broad smile just for Lil. Lil straightened the knot in Lester's tie, returning his smile and letting one hand linger lightly on the man's chest. "You look real fine, Lester," said Lil, beaming. Since everyone else was ready to go, I brushed as quickly as I could in the bathroom. I brushed my teeth and combed my hair. I put on a little shiny red lip gloss that Bobby had left on the counter, then thought better of it and dabbed it off again with a tissue. Before leaving the bathroom, I cheerfully added a paper-wrapped soap to the pocket of my dress that still held Will's birthday present pen. Then I joined the others, and we all flop-flapped down the hall in our new Mega Mart flip-flops, following Lil and Lester downstairs toward the Heartland Bible Supply bus like a gaggle of flat-footed goslings, keeping a lookout for any unwanted attention. Ahead of me, Lil laced her large hand through Lester's arm, and I tried not to listen to Carlene and Rhonda as they carried on at length about his new crush, though today their voices didn't seem as loud and nasty as usual. "I didn't think my boy would ever find himself a decent woman," said Rhonda. "I suppose he'll mess it up." "Decent woman? What was I, chopped liver?" sniped Carlene. "It wasn't my fault Lester couldn't see a good thing when it was right in front of his face." "Lester always liked liver," Rhonda snapped back. "You, Carlene, are just a scrawny old chicken gizzard." I thought about those two gals and their constant griping and belly aching, and my head swam with questions. If I could tell what Lester was thinking or feeling by listening to those voices in my head, why did they always talk about him like he wasn't even there? They were always cutting him down to the quick. It seemed like those two ladies had such an effect on him that now it was the only voice he ever heard. Sorry, let me try that one more time. It seemed like those two ladies had such an effect on him that now it was only their voices he heard loud. Loud, loud. Was it their nasty chit-chat that told Lester who he was? No wonder that man had a stutter and a twitch. Maybe it's like that for everyone, I thought. Maybe we all have other people's voices running higgledy-piggledy through our heads all the time. I thought how often my mama and papa were there inside my head with me, telling me right from wrong, or how the voices of Ashley Bing and Emma Flint sometimes got stuck under my skin, taunting me and making me feel low, even when they weren't around. I began to realize how hard it was to separate out all the voices to hear the single, strong one that came just for me. Climbing back up into the big pink Heartland Bible Supply bus, the morning warm and bright, I tried to listen past Carlene and Rhonda. I tried to hear if there were any of Lester's own voice left in Lester. The more I watched and listened, the more it became clear as clear that whenever Lil smiled Lester's way, or whenever she spoke to him as we traveled down the highway, Carlene and Rhonda seemed to lose their sway. Lil shone on Lester like the sun, and on his arms, his sleeves rolled up, the women's scowling, animated faces dissolved back into the thin, black lines of lifeless tattoos. Maybe Lil was an angel, I thought to myself. Maybe she was Lester's angel, sent down from heaven to clear the voices from his head. I turned my eyes away from the adults, choosing a seat by one of the few windows not threaded with cracks or covered in cardboard and silvery duct tape. I watched out the window as we bumped and thumped toward Waymore, in Lester's next delivery, passing an endless landscape of grizzled cornfields. The earth was yawning and stretching here, turning green at the toes of the brown and broken stalks of last year's harvest. It was spring, and the whole world was coming back to life. The whole world was waking up. Now I thought to myself, if only Papa would too.